Very quickly, education, I want to turn to my colleague. We heard a lot about education.
Yeah.
I've seen the system now through a number of lenses. As many of you know, I'm a product of the public school system from pre-K all the way to grad school, getting my degrees from Brooklyn College. Very proud of that as well. I was a high school teacher. I was a union delegate. I was a staff developer. I was a teacher mentor. I was on the school leadership team, worked with parents and educators. Now serving in the city council, thanks to Speaker Corey Johnson, I am now the chair of the education committee. And that is a responsibility and honor that I take very, very serious. So I just want to briefly, I don't want to get distracted from what we heard before, because I have a lot to say there as well. First of all, there was a lot of talk about the public school, non-public school issue. The mayor, of course, made some remarks in recent years that the city Department of Education should be evaluating whether every single school, non-public or public, is living up to its standards and making sure that they're providing quality education. I believe that is continuing, that evaluation is continuing. But having said that, I'm also very respectful of parent and community choice as well. If there are parents and families that feel that their child is not receiving a quality, sound education in a particular school, that family has a right to say, this is not working, they should go somewhere else. So, I mean, I also await the outcome of the evaluation by the city DOE, but I also want to say this. I do not want us, there's so much at stake when it comes to education that I don't want to spend the next 3-4 years getting into these pitfall areas of public versus non-public or charter versus non-charter. These are all of our kids. These are all of our kids. You know, I don't look at a child and say, is that a charter school child or a public school child? I don't look at a student and say, this is non-public or... These are all of our kids. They deserve to be safe. They deserve to be in a quality sound, they deserve a quality, safe education. And if they're not, then folks should be held accountable. And so I just wanted to share that with you because many times the education debate gets sidetracked by that. But I want to tell you something that happened in recent weeks that I think is worth applause. So as education chair, I make it my priority to visit schools as much as I can. I don't tell the mayor or the DOE where I go. They'll find out afterwards. I visited schools in Queens. I visited schools in Central Brooklyn. I visited schools in South Bronx. I visited schools in Coney, which is my district. I visited schools now pretty much all over, but I will continue to visit schools. Here's what I'm learning. In Sheepshead Bay, yes. Here's what I'm learning. In addition to stuff that I already know, first of all, I asked to meet with more than just the principal. I want to meet with the chapter leader. I want to meet with teachers. I want to meet with parents, parent coordinators. I want to meet with students. I want to meet with guidance counselors. I want to meet with social workers. I want to meet with psychologists. It's not just one person that could tell me the whole story. What I've learned is that those schools that have been labeled the renewal schools or community schools, that they have seen added investment because of years of disinvestment. What did they do with some added money? So a school in Queens I visited, about 500 students, 80% of them English language learners, most of them speak Spanish. And the principal said to me, Councilman, let me tell you what I had to do with some extra resources. And I'll answer your question by having the students speak to you. So I'll never forget this, but I share this with the mayor as well. Student says to me, and this was unscripted, no notes, just speaking from the heart, said to me, Mister, my family comes from Ecuador. I'm afraid, he said, to go outside to buy ice cream with my parents. Because I'm afraid that if I might see an authority figure, that they might try to hurt me or stop me and try to deport me and take me away from my family. So I don't even like to go to buy ice cream. And that was his opening line to me. And he says to me, I'm telling you this because this is a school where I feel more safe in. And then he points to this social worker who then says to me, I was just hired to come in because his story is one of many stories of immigrants in this school that are experiencing high levels of trauma, stress. They're afraid to go outside. They're afraid to even interact with the school safety officer because they see a badge and they think that they might be stopped. And so they are not going, because of this whole dynamic, they're not even going into the classroom sometimes because they just want to either stay home or meet up with friends and kind of hide. And it's had a profound impact on their academic work as well. So the social worker, her first order of business was to say, how do I create a safe space and a welcome space and a sanctuary for them to say, you're welcome here. And so the first thing the kids do when they walk into the school is not go to class, they go to the social worker, where she creates a safe space for them, asks them about their day, make sure that any of their immigration questions are answered and followed up with. If there's a housing issue, she'll follow up with them as well. And so the principal wisely hired a bilingual Spanish-speaking social worker to communicate with students, to validate them. And that has had a profound impact because the teacher now says their attendance has improved, their test scores have improved, and the school numbers overall are improving. And as I visit more and more schools around the city of New York, here's what I've learned. Our school system has over 1.1 million students. 1.1 million students, of which over 100,000 students are listed in temporary housing. About 25,000 live in shelters. And the rest, over 80,000 or so, sleep in different locations almost every night. I share that with you because in that system of over 1.1 million kids, and over 100,000 kids who are in very vulnerable conditions, and other students who have needs, regardless if they have an IEP or not, we only have 556 school psychologists citywide. We have under 1,000 social workers citywide. And for elementary schools, guidance counselors are not even mandated. So if they have one, because the principal chooses to invest in them, which takes money from other things as well. So I've also learned, we had before Simcha Felder, which next time I'd like to follow up with him on some things here as well, because there are some things the state of New York should be doing and has not been doing. So I'm going to, very quickly, I don't want to take up too much time here, but this is what we just got done this past week. The funding that the principals used to hire folks came out of a funding stream called Fair Student Funding. Fair Student Funding is a formula that New York City schools use to determine the needs of kids. This formula was created only in 2008. Why? Because prior to that year, needs of kids were never accounted for. But there was a lawsuit filed by the Campaign for Fiscal Equity, a movement that said that urban districts in New York City are being shortchanged by the state because they don't account for the needs of kids, like poverty, whether a child has an IEP, whether a child's an English language learner. They didn't care about stuff like that. So for years, they shortchanged New York City and other city districts across New York State. We learned that in 2008, when this was first instituted, every school across New York, 1,800 schools, was receiving 100% of their Fair Student Funding formula, based on the needs of their kid population. But after the economic downturn caused by President Bush, there were cuts to the state and cuts to city schools, and many schools were not receiving their fair share, to the point that many of our schools, particularly in areas that are very vulnerable, were receiving under 80% of what they're entitled to. And so I'm proud to say that we put into our council response, thanks to my colleague here and Speaker Corey Johnson, that we should at least get all of our schools, this budget, back up to 90%, the goal to get 100% Fair Student Funding. And Mayor de Blasio saw the light. And he added, exactly, $125 million to New York City's public schools. That is something that is extraordinary. So what that means, just to give you one example, Abraham Lincoln High School in Coney Island will see a $300,000 increase in their budget for September. What do they plan to do with it? They need social workers and guidance counselors.
Yes.
You could also hire art teachers, music teachers, start music programs. This is what our kids need. So I'm just going to close by saying that I value colleagues and leaders that have a track record, that care, and that deliver. And there are folks in this room that have that record. Again, Councilwoman Clark, thank you so much for being here. Councilman Deutsch, thank you for your partnership in the City Council as well. And Ari Margarita, thank you for your partnership. I'll stop here. Any quick, I see you get your hand up. Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to highlight what you just said about the issue with the census, and I think it's extremely important that we emphasize and put effort on it, because in our community, because of lack of education and other issues, there is fear because they don't know what it is, and we at the daycare center, we try to help them as much as possible. I think we need help on those. And on the other issue of education, we see a lot of issues with the students falling behind because of the language issue, cannot get enough help at home, don't have computers at home to do homework or report the homework, so they're falling behind, and then obviously that leads to delinquency and other stuff. So what I was hoping that we would have an effort where after school help can be provided to them for tuition for math and English, so that can give them some confidence and we can help them for the community.
I agree, and I would add that we need to hire also more bilingual educators.
And the social workers you just said was extremely great.
Social workers, guidance counselors, psychologists, paraprofessionals, teachers that speak different languages as well. Absolutely.
Definitely support you.
Yes. Thank you.